Welcome to our mysterious space, where haunting horror stories will make you unable to take your eyes off. If you love stories full of drama, mystery, and a little bit of horror, don't forget to click subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss any new videos from our channel. Tonight, we will step into a story unlike any you have ever heard. A story of strange houses, wandering souls that can never be freed, and unexplainable sounds. You will follow every step of the main character, exploring mysteries with them in dark rooms, where space and time seem distorted. Prepare yourself to enter a world full of darkness and mystery. If you're ready, sit back, relax, and let the story begin. And don't forget to click like, share if you find the story interesting, as well as subscribe, to always accompany us in the next strange adventures. Wishing you an evening full of curiosity and thrills. Strange House Horror Story. That evening, cool air filled the city. The street lights flickered weakly under the light rain, creating a blurry and mysterious picture. I entered a small restaurant, which I accidentally found while passing through an empty street, separate from the noise of the city. Inside the restaurant, warm light from yellow lamps gently illuminates the ancient walls, with curved frames swaying in the humid air. The owner stood behind the bar, quietly wiping the wooden table as if he was lost in a distant thought. I walked in and clearly felt the strange silence here, as if time here was frozen, unchanged. This feeling made me a little uncomfortable, but curiosity motivated me to take a step further into this space. I chose a table near the window, where the yellow light reflected through the frosted glass. Service staff quickly appeared. She was a young, pleasant-looking woman with long, loose black hair. She gave me the menu without saying a word. My eyes glanced over the familiar dishes, but I couldn't help but notice the pictures on the wall. The frames are curved, some at a slight angle, some straight. But anyway, the feeling of not being right still sticks with me. When the waitress returned, I couldn't hold back my curiosity and asked, "How long have you worked here?" She looked at me for a moment, then answered briefly, "About 6 months." She glanced briefly at the picture frames on the wall and added, "Actually, I don't mind working here, although things seem a bit strange." I looked at her, feeling like something wasn't right. "How strange?" I asked, trying to make the conversation last longer. She paused, her gaze drifting toward the frames again, as if they were calling to her. Sometimes, you'll feel strange things. But I think I'm used to it. It's not dangerous, at least not as far as I know." I waited, quietly observing her. Part of me wanted to leave immediately, but another part urged me to stay and learn more. I asked further, "Is there anything else besides picture frames and glass doors that open and close automatically?" She hesitated for a moment and then sighed, "Sometimes you'll hear footsteps, even though there's no one around. Doors open or close on their own, but that's not always the case. People will ignore it if they work here for a long time." Her answer made me feel restless. How many times in my life have I heard about such strange phenomena? But no, I can't simply ignore them. The feeling inside me became stronger and stronger. I can't leave without understanding what's going on here. I stopped, sighed, then sat back at my desk. She turned away and returned to the kitchen without another word. A minute later, I started to stand up and walk around the dining area, my eyes stopping at the photo frames. I wanted to find out if there was something in them that could explain the strange phenomena the waitress had just shared. I gently pressed my hand against a photo frame. It's a little loose, but nothing unusual. However, when I let go, I heard a slight scratching sound from behind me. I turned around and suddenly discovered a wooden chair, a few inches away from the table, that seemed to have moved strangely. My palms were sweaty, my heart was pounding. I stood there stunned for a moment, not daring to come closer. The chair was still there, motionless, and nothing had changed. I slowly approached and pushed the chair back to its original position, but the uncomfortable feeling made me unable to endure it for long. My head was hot, and my stomach felt sick. I returned to my chair, not daring to look around anymore. At this point, I just wanted to finish the meal, pay and leave. I tried checking my phone, but only 10 minutes had passed. It feels like time passes so slowly, as if every minute lasts forever. I looked at the waitress, waved my hand to ask for the check. She put it down without saying anything, just a nod. I quietly placed the tip on the table and stood up. As I was about to leave, I glanced at the manager, who was still standing there, diligently cleaning a spot on the bar. He seemed tired, as if he had been used to this job for a long time, and no longer felt anything about it. I nodded slightly at him, but he didn't react. The strange feeling did not let me go. When I pushed the door open and stepped out, cold air immediately rushed into my face. The night sky was clear, but I couldn't get rid of the heavy feeling in my heart. I tried to calm down, stepped onto the sidewalk and turned to look at the restaurant one last time. The sign had faded into the night, and the windows had gone dark. I couldn't see inside anymore, but the images in my head were still clear: curved picture frames, wooden chairs that moved on their own. All of that cannot be easily forgotten. My steps became heavy. My heart was still beating fast, and I felt like I just walked out of a place I shouldn't have entered in the first place. Even though I tried to focus on the present, everything felt hazy, as if something invisible still clung to me. After stepping out of the restaurant, cold air suddenly hit my face, slightly relieving the feeling of tension weighing on my heart. The night sky was clear, the stars sparkled brightly but faintly in the weak streetlights. I walked along the sidewalk, trying to escape the feeling of restlessness and inexplicable anxiety. But the images from the restaurant, from the moving wooden chairs to the strange photo frames, still swirled in my mind. Every step feels like a burden. My eyes couldn't stop from those blurry frames, and I wondered if I was haunted by the truth or just the imagination of a tired mind. But the feeling in my heart, the strangeness I had witnessed, was not so easy to ignore. Part of me wanted to go back, wanted to find the answer, but the other part just wanted to get far away from that place. I turned back to look at the restaurant again, the weak light of the sign fading into the night. Part of me felt relieved, but part of me wanted to find out and uncover the mystery that I had accidentally embarked on. I sighed, trying to focus on walking back to the car, but something invisible was pulling me closer to that house. It felt like someone was watching me from behind. When I got into the car, I still couldn't shake that strange feeling. My heart was heavy, and I couldn't stop thinking about the mysterious phenomena in the restaurant. Curved frames and chairs that move on their own are not the norm. I needed to know more, I needed an explanation, even if it was just a small part. As I drove home, the dim traffic lights gradually passed, the space outside was still silent and peaceful. But in my mind, it was like a storm was brewing. I wonder if I'm paying too much attention to small details or if there's really something weird going on. But then I told myself, maybe I just need to rest, it won't be anything too serious. It was all just a coincidence, an inexplicable feeling in that moment. I arrived at the house and went inside, but the heavy feeling still did not let me go. My apartment, with its old walls and silent space, suddenly became gloomier than usual. I wonder if I'm imagining things? Or can these strange phenomena really happen? I looked around, trying to calm myself down. But when I put my hand on the ceiling rim, a feeling of something wrong arose within me. A strange sound rang out from near the corner of the ceiling, a creak so soft it was almost imperceptible. I stopped, wondering if I had heard wrong. But then I realized, that feeling was not my imagination. The slight hollow feeling near the corner of the ceiling is like an invisible warning. At this moment, I couldn't help but pay attention to what was happening around me. I took an old stool, stepped on it and examined it closer. As I pried off a small section of the ceiling trim, a thin layer of dust fell onto my shoulders, making me shiver. My head seemed to be telling me to stop, but a strange pulling force made me unable to stop. I continued to pull more of the trim out and realized that there was a layer of hard plaster that was the wrong color from the rest of the ceiling. It feels like someone intentionally hid something. My heart pounded as I began to pry the plank apart. Each falling piece made a cracking sound, but I couldn't stop. Thin dust flew up, making my eyes sting. I took a deep breath to dispel the stuffy feeling in the air. And then, when I pulled out a large enough space, the flashlight's light shone into a gloomy space behind. It was not a simple void, but a hidden room. Inside are old, dusty items. A couch along one wall, a low coffee table in the middle of the room, and a few chairs around it. Everything hadn't been used in a while, but there was something strange about the way it was arranged. Chairs should not be pushed close to the wall as if someone was just sitting there, or living in this space. A shiver ran down my spine. Marks on the floor, strange debris made me feel an inexplicable presence. It seemed like someone had been using this room, although it looked like it had been abandoned for a long time. The feeling of insecurity grew inside me. Who was here? And why was the room so hidden? I continued to check the room. A desk was placed near a corner. On the desk were old pens, some dried ink bottles and pieces of paper with no writing on them. I couldn't help but feel the instability in this space, as if this room had been left behind a long time ago but still contained traces of the people who once lived here. As I bent down to examine a table, I heard a strange sound, a slight scraping sound as I stepped on a loose board on the floor. These traces cannot be just a coincidence. I looked around and realized that I was no longer sure of what I was seeing. The air became even heavier, and I felt like an invisible presence was watching me from the dark corners of this room. No matter how closely I checked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I had entered a space that should not be known. This strange feeling makes me unable to stop. I decided to search for more information and continue exploring this room. But just as I was about to move, the light in the room suddenly flickered, then went out. Everything was in darkness. When the light went out, the air in the room became thick. I tried not to let the panic take me, but I couldn't deny that my heart was beating harder than ever. This room, originally empty and gloomy, now seemed to become a mysterious space. The flashlight in my hand began to fade, leaving only a weak light shining on the old dusty objects around me. I cannot understand what is happening. The feeling of fear rose like an underground wave in my heart. I tried pressing the light switch but nothing changed. It seemed like everything around me was protesting. I started to feel like I was trapped in a space that didn't belong to me. A sudden thought flashed in my head, maybe I'm in a trap. That feeling made me freeze. I looked around, feeling the strange silence of the room. But then I told myself, I have to keep going. If I want to know the truth, I can't stop. I walked to the bench along the wall, where it was covered in dust. The smell of old wood and fresh air has long since disappeared. Only a space filled with stuffiness and loneliness remained. The flashlight shined into every small corner of the room. I noticed old marks on the floor, small faint footprints. They can't be mine, because I've never been in here before. The feeling of tension rose little by little. I approached the coffee table, where there was an old magazine sitting on the table. Dust covered, but I still feel there is something strange here. When I lifted the magazine, there was a creaking sound, like someone was sighing from behind. I turned around, but there was no one there. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. I couldn't breathe. The objects in this room, with traces of time, seemed to be watching me, waiting for what I would do next. I decided to check the small cabinet in the corner of the room. My hand trembled as I touched the doorknob. When I opened it, I was startled to discover that inside there were only old shirts, neatly folded as if someone had lived here recently. The small shoes, thick dust stains, and pieces of fabric stuck to my shirt made me feel like there was another presence in this space. Who lived here? And why did they leave all these traces? I closed the door, and it felt like someone was still watching me from the dark. Once again, I sought to dispel this strange feeling, but when I turned around, I saw something moving in the darkness. Before I realized it, I felt a cold hand touch my shoulder. My whole body tensed. I turned around quickly, but there was nothing but empty space. A small noise sounded from behind, as if someone was walking, but could not be seen. Suddenly, my flashlight lit up again, illuminating this dark room more clearly. I looked towards the corner of the room where the light suddenly came, and I saw, not a shadow, but a small, completely new window. It is not included in the spatial map of this house. I moved closer, and when I put my hand on the window, I felt a rush of cold air. Unlike the air outside, this cold air had something very strange. It could almost paralyze me. I tried to open the door, but it was stuck and couldn't move. Just then, a creaking noise came from above my head. Immediately, I looked up. A window in the ceiling suddenly opened, with such force that it stunned me. Dim light from outside shone in, and I realized there was a figure standing on the roof looking down at me. A faint, unclear figure. I couldn't tell who it was, but I knew for sure it wasn't a hallucination. My heart seemed to stop beating. I stepped back, not daring to move forward. At this moment, I cannot deny that the feeling that has been following me all this time cannot simply be a coincidence. This house is hiding mysteries that I could never have imagined. The space returned to silence. I couldn't decide whether I should leave or continue investigating. But I know that there is something bigger than me, stronger than me, controlling everything around me. And I could only continue, despite the fear, despite the strange feelings that were growing inside me. The window in the ceiling slowly closed, engulfing the space in darkness. The air around me became so heavy that I almost felt suffocated. The feeling of being watched became more and more obvious, making it impossible for me to breathe freely. The strange details I witnessed in this room, the traces I couldn't explain, all created a picture I couldn't escape. I took a step back, trying not to let fear take over, but part of me urged me to find out the truth behind these phenomena. I turned back to look at the gloomy room, old objects covered in dust, traces that I couldn't explain. Wooden chairs placed around the room, a low coffee table in the middle, all lying quietly like inanimate objects. But deep inside, I felt an undeniable presence. Something was waiting for me, someone was watching me from the shadows. I decided to continue investigating. Even though I may be putting myself in a dangerous situation, I can't give up. I have to find out what's going on in this house. I walked closer to the old desk, where I had found dry pens and pieces of paper without words. The feeling of insecurity increased when I noticed something strange. A piece of paper had been thrown away, lying on top of other pieces of paper. I took it, skimming through the faint, unclear writing. The content on the paper made me feel cold. They came in the dark of night, and when they left no trace. But their traces still linger in this house. I frowned, unable to fully understand what I was reading. But one thing I can be sure of is, something unusual is happening in this room. The suffocating feeling arose again. The air in the room seemed to become thicker, and every step I took felt like a burden. I started looking around again, trying to identify any details that could explain these strange things. A corner of the room near the window, where faint light streamed in from outside, caught my attention. It was a small cabinet, like an antique storage cabinet. From the outside, I couldn't see the inside clearly, but I felt like there was something attached to it. I approached the cabinet, feeling tension rising in my heart. Every step feels like a bet, as if I move forward, I won't be able to go back. My hand trembled as I placed it on the doorknob. When I opened the cabinet, a cold breeze rushed out, making me shiver. Inside the cabinet, there is nothing but a few old books and a small wooden box. I don't know why, but I feel like this box has a special meaning. Opening the box, I discovered that inside was an old notebook. The cover was worn and the color had faded over time. I opened the notebook, and what I read gave me chills. The notes in the notebook read like the diary of someone who lived here before me. One of the notes reads, "They came in the dark, carrying old things, and never seemed to leave." I tried to hide from them, but I couldn't. They were always here, watching me, and not leaving me alone. My heart felt like it was being squeezed by an invisible hand. What I was reading seemed like warnings, like a sign that what I was experiencing wasn't a coincidence. A feeling of fear welled up. Who wrote these lines? And why do they talk about them? I couldn't help but think of the apparitions I'd seen in the house, the strange phenomena I couldn't explain. Suddenly, a creaking noise rang out from behind. I turned around, but saw nothing. The whole space fell into silence again. However, the feeling like someone was looking at me from the darkness grew stronger and stronger. I know I can't stay here any longer, but part of me doesn't want to give up. Part of me wants to explore until the end, even if I have to face horrors. And then, as if someone wanted me to stop, I heard a gentle sound from above my head. I looked up, and couldn't believe my eyes. A faint figure was standing right on the ceiling, as if watching me from above. My eyes opened wide, unable to take my eyes off that figure. I couldn't see the face clearly, but I knew that this was not my imagination. The cold feeling from that figure made me shiver. I stepped back, my eyes still following the blurry shape on the ceiling. Suddenly, the figure disappeared, and the room returned to its original silence. But I know I can't leave. I cannot ignore these traces. There is something bigger than me, stronger than me, controlling everything here, and I have to face it. My heart was pounding. The pounding in my chest echoed so strongly that I felt like I could hear that sound in the silence of the room. A cold feeling invaded me from head to toe, making my body tremble. The shadowy figure on the ceiling had just disappeared, but I still couldn't get that image out of my mind. The light from the weak flashlight still shines into the dusty room, and the old objects around seem to be watching me, waiting for what I do next. I couldn't help but wonder if I was falling into a nightmare. Strange phenomena, from a chair moving on its own to a faint shadow on the ceiling, are all too mysterious to be just coincidence. And the notes in the old notebook opened before my eyes, like a warning, talking about people who the writer said, never leave. Were they in the same situation as me, trapped in an inexplicable world? I stopped for a moment, looked at the old notebook in my hand, then slowly placed it on the table. The feeling that I couldn't continue reading anymore rose within me. It seemed like the words on that page could get me caught up in something I couldn't escape from. But some part of me still insisted on continuing, wanting to explore until the end. Because if I don't, I will never be at peace. With that determination, I stood up and started walking around the room again. I looked at the objects, each wooden chair, the low coffee table, and especially the small cabinet I had opened earlier. An uneasy feeling rose within me as I looked into the closet, as if it was hiding something important, something I needed to find. I walked closer and opened the closet door again, but this time, I wasn't just looking for old items. I feel like I need to figure out something that I overlooked before. When I opened the closet door, I saw a strange object underneath a pile of books and old shirts. It was a small wooden box, intricately carved with strange patterns, like ancient symbols I had seen in books. Feelings of curiosity and fear mixed inside me as I took the box. It wasn't heavy, but it felt like an invisible burden was weighing me down when I opened the lid. Inside the box was a small piece of paper, folded many times. I slowly opened it, and read the faint words. They come at night, in silence, no one hears them. But their traces always remain, hidden in old objects, paintings, chairs, and doors that open and close naturally. They are always watching, and they never leave. The warning in the piece of paper was like a bucket of cold water thrown at me. I've known it for a long time, the strange feeling I experienced at the restaurant, at this apartment, it's all connected. There is something supernatural manipulating everything, controlling every event that takes place in this space. Who are they in this record? And why leave behind traces that I cannot understand? While I was still confused, a strong wind suddenly blew through the window, shaking everything in the room. The flashlight in my hand flashed and then turned off, leaving the room in complete darkness. My heart was pounding, and I felt the space around me shrinking, squeezing me. The smell of dust and humid air made it difficult for me to breathe. I could only stand there, my hands shaking, my eyes staring into the darkness, where I knew something was waiting. Suddenly, I heard a slight noise from behind me, as if someone was walking in silence. The feeling of being watched returned strongly. I turned around, but there was nothing but thick darkness, and the space seemed unusually quiet. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm, but part of me knew I couldn't stay here any longer. I started backing towards the door, each step feeling like a step closer to liberation. But when I was about to approach the door, a loud noise rang out from behind, as if something heavy had fallen to the ground. I turned around quickly, and what I saw I couldn't believe my eyes. A large wooden chair, which had been placed silently before, suddenly flipped over and slid towards me, as if an invisible hand was pushing it. The squeak of the chair on the floor was like a warning. Suddenly, a door opened from the other side of the room. Faint light shone in from outside, and I saw a figure standing there, hidden in the darkness. Just a shadow, not clear, but I knew that it was not a living person. I looked at it, a cold feeling ran down my spine. "We can't let you go." That voice rang out, but it didn't come from anyone's mouth. It seemed to come from space, from this very room, and I felt a clear threat in each sound. The shadow standing in the window did not move, just stood there, blurry and silent. I couldn't see its face or shape clearly, but its presence was clearer than ever. Every breath I took seemed to slow down, suffocating in the heavy air. The shadow was not an ordinary person, but something else, an invisible being, a spirit, or a mysterious force, I don't know. The voice rang out in the quiet space, interrupting my thoughts, gently but powerfully, "We can't let you go." That is not a saying of a living person. It came from every corner of the room, from every wall, every smallest corner, as if that voice had penetrated space and time to reach me. I felt squeezed, as if an invisible hand was squeezing my heart, making it impossible for me to move. I couldn't stop, my legs felt like they were frozen. I tried to breathe, but the air in the room now seemed thick, making me feel suffocated. I turned my back on the shadow and hurried towards the door. Every step felt like a challenge, as if I was fighting against thick air, unable to escape the invisible forces trying to stop me. As I approached the door, the wooden chair I had seen before moved again, this time sliding quickly towards me. I didn't have time to avoid it, and the chair stopped just a few inches away from me. A loud creak sounded, as if it was warning me. I screamed inside but couldn't make a sound. My whole body seemed frozen in fear. Suddenly, from behind, a blast of cold air blew through the room, making me shiver. A voice, clearer this time, rang out from the void, "You can't escape." It felt like an invisible hand pressed tightly against my chest, making it impossible for me to breathe. I turned to look at the figure again, and this time, I saw it a little more clearly. It was a man, but a blurred, indistinct shape, just a gloomy shadow standing in the air. His eyes glowed, as if burning from a dark fire. My heart was filled with a deep fear. It's a person, but not a person. Is it a spirit or a monster? Or is it part of this space, something that has been imprisoned within these walls for a long time? The shadow did not move, but its presence became increasingly clear, overwhelming the space around me. I felt caught in a trap that I couldn't escape from. Right now, I can't just stand there and do nothing. I had to do something, even though I knew it might be the wrong choice. I pulled out of my pocket the small key I had found earlier in the house. This key, I don't know what it does, but there's something compelling me to use it. I feel like I have to find a way out, even though I don't know if this key can open any doors or not. I approached the small window I had seen before, where the light from outside was shining in. It felt like an invisible current flowed through me when I picked up the key. My mind told me I shouldn't do this, but my heart urged me to move forward. When I touched the key to the window frame, a cold feeling rose inside me. The door began to slowly open, and as the light from outside shone in, I saw another space, a space completely different from the room I was standing in. It was a large space, dark and silent, like a larger room was hidden under the shell of this house. I felt a strong suction from inside. Everything around me seemed to stop, and I knew that this was the only way out. But a question appeared in my mind: can I leave? Will this room really allow me to escape, or am I walking into another trap where things will only get worse? In a decisive moment, I decided to enter. I can't stop anymore. I felt like I had no choice but to face something I couldn't explain. When I entered that space, I felt an absolute coldness. The surrounding space seemed to absorb all sounds, leaving a strange feeling of emptiness. And then, as I went deeper, I saw something. A high wall, covered in dust, and a dark wooden door. That door looks like it hasn't been opened in a long time. I know that this is the answer, and it is not an easy answer. This is the final mystery of this house, and I will have to face it. I approached, my hand trembling on the doorknob. When I turned the doorknob, a noise rang out, and the surrounding wall began to shake. Everything felt like it was falling apart, and I couldn't stop. I opened the door, and light shone from inside, bringing with it a cold wind. Behind the door is a strange space, with old paintings and strange objects, as if they have existed for centuries. But in that space, there was something special that made me stop. A wooden chair, identical to the one that had moved in the room before, sat in the middle of the room. And on that chair, a man sat, with eyes as bright as fire, looking at me with cold and empty eyes. When I opened the door, the space behind it was not what I imagined. Faint light shines in from outside, making the space behind the door suddenly bright in a strange way. A cold breeze, like the breath of another world, blew past and made me shiver. I stood still, unable to move, my eyes still glued to the wooden chair placed in the middle of the dark room. That chair was identical to the chair I had seen earlier in the room. But what made me unable to take my eyes off it was the man sitting on it. His appearance was hazy, indistinct, but his eyes that glowed like flames in the darkness, looked straight at me. Those eyes were cold and indifferent, as if I had nothing important to him other than an inexplicable curiosity. "We've been waiting for a long time," his voice rang out, gentle but powerful. It didn't come from his mouth, but as if it had penetrated through space, rushing into my ears from all directions. I felt my heart stop beating for a beat, my limbs were cold. It was not the voice of a normal human being, it carried mystery and unexplainable threats. I couldn't answer, I just stood there, my heart felt like it was about to burst with fear. Everything around began to become blurry, the room seemed to stretch on forever. The paintings on the wall faded, and the surrounding wooden chairs and coffee tables seemed to disappear into the dark space, leaving only the silhouette of the man on the chair. "You can't leave," he continued, his tone unchanged. "This house is a part of us. You can't escape it." His shadow began to move, although his body remained still in the chair. His eyes, still glowing in the darkness, were like an unquenchable fire. Every step I took seemed to be stopped by an invisible force, pulling me closer to the chair. I couldn't breathe, it felt like an invisible hand was squeezing my throat. "We are part of this house," the voice said again, this time almost a whisper in my ear. "Everything you see, everything you feel, we created. You came here, and you won't leave alone." I can't understand what he said. I don't want to hear anymore. But my body felt frozen, I couldn't move. My eyes still couldn't leave him, and in the depths of my mind, I felt a horrifying truth: I was imprisoned in this very house, a house that I thought I could leave at any time. But now, I realize that not everything in this house belongs to me. "Did you know," he continued, his voice as soft as a whisper, "that the pictures on the wall, the chairs, the table, all have witnessed many things? They have seen other souls enter, then become trapped in this house, never able to escape." His words were like a cold wind blowing through my mind. The paintings, the chairs, the objects in this room, they are not just inanimate objects. They are part of the house, part of the trapped souls. And I accidentally entered, became a part of this space. I gulped, trying to calm myself. Part of me couldn't believe what was happening. But the rest of me, a part deep inside my mind, knew that what I was feeling couldn't just be my imagination. I can't continue standing here, I can't let myself get caught up in this strange world. I have to get out. I have to find a way out. But when I looked back, the door I had opened earlier was no longer there. Instead, there was just a dark wall. The whole space seemed to have completely changed, becoming a maze with no way out. Everything around me started spinning, making me dizzy. I felt like I was being drawn into an invisible vortex, and that man's shadow was always following me, his eyes never leaving. "Where are you going? Why are you running away?" He laughed, and his laughter echoed throughout the space, as if penetrating every wall. "You can't escape here, you're part of this place. You'll never leave." At this moment, I felt a strange strength, as if an invisible hand was lifting me off the ground. The space around me disappeared, leaving only darkness and the other man's sighs. I felt like I was sinking into a place where space and time no longer existed. Everything around me began to disappear, becoming blurry, leaving only whispers echoing from invisible walls. In that moment, I realized something important. I didn't come here by accident. I was drawn into this world, a world I couldn't understand, a world where old souls were still imprisoned, waiting for people like me. When I realized that I couldn't escape, a cold feeling surrounded me. I am no longer standing on the ground. The whole space around me began to spin like a tornado, taking me into another world. Everything fades away, leaving only an endless dark space. I felt like I was falling into a deep abyss, with no bottom in sight. My heart was beating wildly, as if an invisible hand was squeezing my throat. Then, like a sudden awakening, I suddenly realized that nothing could scare me more than this feeling, the feeling of being trapped in a vortex with no way out. I closed my eyes, trying to find a little calm in this chaotic space. But when I opened my eyes, I found I was no longer in the dark room. Before my eyes was another scene, strange and haunting. I was standing in a long, dark hallway, where there was no light other than the blur of long shadows. The surrounding walls seemed old and covered with dust, but what scared me the most were the strange drawings on the walls. The scribbles, like ancient characters, like signs I couldn't understand. Each of those letters emitted a dim light, as if they were looking at me, following me. Footsteps, not sure where they came from, sounded from the end of the hallway. I turned around, and in the darkness, I noticed a figure approaching. It was the man I met in the room before, still sitting on the wooden chair, but this time, he was walking towards me, each step making dry sounds, as if stepping on rotten ground. "You can't leave," he said, and his voice was like a curse, paralyzing every thought in my head. "You are part of us, part of this house. Other souls have paid the price for their curiosity. And now it's your turn." His shadow continued to move, but this time not with normal steps, but with a blurry movement, as if he was floating in the air. I couldn't move, my feet were frozen to the ground. With every step he took, I felt myself sinking deeper and deeper into a world I couldn't escape from. But in that moment, I suddenly realized something I had never thought of: this house is not just a house. A vague feeling invaded my mind, as if I was standing in a space where time did not exist. A space where past and present blend together. Are the souls this man talking about the same people who have been imprisoned here for a long time, and this house is where they must live, suffer, and never be able to escape? I feel like there is a truth slowly emerging, but at the same time, I also know that if I don't act now, I will become a part of this place, a part of a story that I can never change. I can't let myself become a soul trapped in this house. I must find the truth, no matter what I face. "This house is a trap," I whispered, as if reminding myself. "It's all designed to trap the souls, to make it impossible for them to escape." Suddenly, a large door appeared before my eyes, as if it had existed forever. That door was unlike any door I had seen before. It is made of hard wood, the lines on it are like the traces of time, the traces of the souls that have passed here. And above the door, a symbol I had seen in strange paintings before, but this time, it lit up like a fire, emitting a crimson light. I felt a strong urge. I know this is the only way out. I approached the door, placed my hand on the handle, feeling a strange warmth emanating from there. A gentle pull came from inside the door, as if some force was inviting me. But when I started turning the doorknob, the man's voice rang out again, this time threatening. You think you can escape us? You think you can run away? The price you have to pay won't be easy. But I don't stop. Part of me knows that if I don't act now, I will be imprisoned forever. I took a deep breath and opened the door. When the door opened, a strong stream of light shined in from inside, illuminating the entire space. And I walked in, not knowing what I would face. A cold breeze blew, and I felt like I was entering another world. Every step I took felt like I was going into a deep hole, and I didn't know if I could get back. But I know one thing for sure, I won't go back. As I walked through the door, the blinding light around me gradually subsided, and I found myself standing in another space, a large, but completely different room. Everything around is old and tattered, but something strange is present here. I felt like I had just stepped into the heart of all the mysteries. And in the deep darkness of that room, I saw a wooden chair, exactly like the one I had seen before. But this time, there was a figure sitting on that chair. Not the man I had met before, but another figure, a true soul. The door closed behind me, and immediately, I felt a strange change in the surrounding space. It was no longer the cold and quiet of the old hallway, but a large room filled with darkness. But what I couldn't take my eyes off was the wooden chair. It stood there, in the middle of the room, with a figure sitting on it. The figure was unclear, its face could not be seen clearly, but I felt its presence strong and overwhelming. A feeling of claustrophobia overtook me as I looked at the chair. This spirit, or this strange creature, seemed to be waiting for me. I can't determine whether he is a friend or an enemy. But I know one thing for sure, if I don't face it, I will never get out of this place. I walked towards the chair slowly, as if entering a world I had no control over. The figure on the chair did not move, but I felt his eyes staring at me, following my every step. The feeling of being constantly observed gave me goosebumps. I took a deep breath, trying to find calm in the panic rising within me. As I approached the chair, I noticed that the shadow was not a human-like creature. It had a vague shape, its hands were faintly reaching out as if wanting to touch me. I took a step back, my heart beating fast. And then, that voice rang out again, not from the shadow's mouth, but from everywhere in the room. You're too close, the voice rang in my ears, soft but threatening. You think you can change anything? You're just one of the lost souls we've met. You can't run away from this fate. The voice was like a curse, pulling me down to the ground. I felt trapped in a world I couldn't explain. The room became darker and darker, and the surrounding shadows began to move. Strange shapes, souls that had never been released, seemed to be floating in space, watching me. The feeling of stress and fear pushed me to the brink of despair. But then, a light flashed in my mind. A thought popped out, as if a call from deep within the subconscious. This soul, the one sitting on this chair, is not the only one here. This is a trap. I looked around and realized that the souls in this room were all trapped in an inescapable space, just like me. And that shadow is the symbol of this imprisonment. I have to get out. I cannot let myself become part of this trap. With a strength I didn't know where it came from, I turned around and ran towards the door that closed behind me. But when I turned around, I couldn't see the door anymore. It disappeared, as if it never existed. I stopped, confused, and looked around. All the souls, shadowy figures, seemed to be waiting for me, looking at me with angry eyes. I felt an invisible force pulling me back, forcing me to stand back, to face what I had found. "You can't run away," the shadow's voice said again, this time clearer than ever. "The price you pay is a share of all these souls. You will never escape." I felt like I was sinking into a nightmare. These spirits, these creatures that cannot leave, they will drag me down with them. But I can't bear it anymore. I can't let myself become a part of this house, become a trapped soul. I took a deep breath, telling myself that I could do it. I walked closer to the chair, not to face the shadow, but to do what I had never dared to do. I had to break this imprisonment, to free myself and other souls. With all my remaining strength, I reached out and touched the chair. A cold feeling came over me, but instead of fear, I felt a strong determination. A wave of dazzling light spread from the chair throughout the room, causing all the surrounding darkness to suddenly recede. The spirits around me hissed, as if they didn't want this to happen. But I don't stop. I pulled the chair out of the darkness and set it aside. The light from the chair was stronger than ever, as if pushing all shadows back. And in that moment, I felt a strange change. The spirits around me suddenly fell silent, and the space became still, as if everything was standing still, waiting for something. Suddenly, a door appeared in front of me, opening into a stream of brilliant white light. I couldn't believe my eyes. This is the only way out. That shadow, with a faint shape, still sat there, but this time, there were no threatening words. There was only silence, as if he had been defeated. I don't hesitate. I ran towards the door, never looking back. And when I walked through the door, a feeling of relief flooded my body. I don't know what I did, but I felt liberated. I am no longer imprisoned in this house. When I thought I had escaped that strange house, where the spirits never left, I could not have imagined that I would be drawn into another story, one that I could not escape. That strange feeling, as if unexplainable phenomena still haunted me. A feeling as if something was unfinished, as if I couldn't really escape the trap into which that house had forced me. Some time later, I went to a small hotel in the suburbs. I thought I had found a peaceful place to forget everything, but no, something strange was waiting for me. Little did I know that room 104, where I had made a reservation, was associated with events that I could never explain. When I entered the room, the dim light of the street lamps outside shone through the window, creating long, melancholy shadows on the wall. Everything in the room seemed normal, but I felt an inexplicable feeling, as if something wasn't quite right. I used to think I was free from all the hauntings, but when I looked at the empty bed in room 104, I felt something familiar and scary. Suddenly, I remembered the scene in that strange house, the memories of the souls that could not escape, and the feeling when I hurriedly left. Why is there this coincidence? Is room 104 related to that house? And why am I drawn into these bizarre events? In my heart, a strong worry rose. A cold feeling enveloped the room. I turned back to look at the small envelope the receptionist had given me. My eyes still couldn't leave the cold words inside. "Next time avoid room 104 for your own good." Those words were like a warning that couldn't be ignored, but they were inexplicable. Why room 104? And why, despite my efforts to escape, do I feel like I'm still stuck in a chain of events that I can't understand? I returned to the driver's seat inside. Despite the feeling of nervousness and worry settling in my heart, I still couldn't stop. The knocking sounds, the silhouettes in the mirror, the strange feeling kept haunting me. I can't get over what happened. What's really going on in this hotel? Why is room 104 banned? And why did everything come together that night? These thoughts kept running through my head as I drove away from that area. But the air outside, even though it seemed fresh, couldn't dispel the feeling of fear that was engulfing me. Every time I looked in the rearview mirror, it felt like something was watching me, like a dark shadow was lurking in the shadow of the building that had disappeared behind me. I can't escape that thought. The long road was dim before my eyes. I tried to regain my composure, turning on the radio to dispel the silence in the car, but the sound only made me more restless. Gentle music could not erase the eerie feeling in the air. I turned to look at the rearview mirror again, and in that brief moment, I saw something, a silhouette, just a glimpse, but enough to make my heart clench. When I reached an intersection and the traffic light turned red, I slowed down, keeping my eyes on the rearview mirror. For a second, I thought I saw a faint figure standing on the sidewalk, near the area where that hotel had stood. It was just an illusion, I told myself. That's for sure. But I couldn't get rid of that feeling, and it kept coming back to haunt me. After an hour of driving, I reached a small cafe on the road. Although it was still early, the restaurant was already quite crowded. I stopped the car and got in, trying to find some peace. But the atmosphere in the shop was not as pleasant as I thought. The eyes of the people around me seemed to not only look at me, but also look through me, as if they knew something I couldn't understand. I put myself in a corner, trying to regain my composure. The cup of coffee I ordered couldn't ease my feeling of anxiety. I searched my mind for the events that had happened in the hotel, the knocking sounds, the silhouettes, the inexplicable feelings. Room 104. It was actually part of something larger, and I couldn't escape the fact that I was pulled into it, unable to pull away. I suddenly realized that I couldn't continue to run away from what had happened. Not just out of curiosity, but because I sensed something more terrifying. Maybe I've only scratched the surface of something very deep, very dark, and I can't simply forget. Back to the hotel? Am I repeating my mistakes? Or will I have the courage to face the truth that I don't want to know? I picked up the phone, not to call anyone, but to check the recording I had saved from that night. The tapping sound, again, was heard clearly in the recording. The more I listened, the more I noticed a strange change in the sound. Those weren't normal knocking sounds, but something else. A knocking sound was created by an object, not by a person. What's going on in that hotel? And do I have enough courage to find out the truth? Oh, can't stop thinking about that hotel. After leaving the cafe, I drove around the city, trying to banish images of room 104, trying to convince myself that I was brave enough to leave everything behind. But things only became more obscure. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. And I clearly feel that I can't get out of it yet. A feeling of suffocation enveloped my mind, anxiety rising like a huge wave. Even though I tried to find a logical reason for everything I went through, questions kept surrounding me. The mysterious door of room 104, strange knocking sounds and silhouettes passing by in the mirror, it's all an inexplicable mess. I decided to go back to the hotel. Not because I wanted to answer those questions, but because I felt like I was standing on the edge of a truth that I couldn't avoid. Maybe I'm creating these thoughts myself, but something inside me just can't stop. Long sleepless nights, anxiety, and stress made me decide to go back and find out. I cannot live with these unanswered questions. So the next afternoon, I drove back. The scene outside the window blurred before my eyes, and I realized that even sunlight could not ease the fear in my heart. When I arrived, the hotel was still standing there, dim and silent. The faint sign seemed familiar, but now, it had a strange appeal, making me feel cold. I walked into the lobby, where the receptionist was still sitting there, with a cold and stiff expression. He looked at me for a long moment, but said nothing. I felt his eyes probing me, as if he knew I would return. Room 104. I said, but my voice was almost choked. He looked at me, then nodded silently. There was no expression on his face, just a simple nod. He took the key from the counter and gave it to me without saying anything else. My heart felt heavy when I received the keys. But this time, I no longer feel scared like before. Instead, I felt a strong determination. I would find the truth, no matter what I had to face. When I walked up the stairs, the light in the hallway was still dim, no different from last time. The gentle sound of footsteps echoed in the quiet space. Every step I take feels like a step closer to something mysterious, something I cannot understand. But I know I have to face it. Arriving at the door of room 104, I stopped for a moment and took a deep breath. The cold feeling from the metal door passed through my hand. I used the key and opened the door. The room is still the same. Old carpet, single bed with thin blanket, small table, and large mirror in the corner of the room. This time, however, there was no sense of peace. Everything around me seemed to be covered in a mist. I felt a sense of emptiness, but at the same time an invisible presence was covering the room. I can't just stand by and watch. I went to the bed and sat down. The faint light from outside the window made the room dark and strange. I looked into the mirror, and this time, I didn't see myself. Instead, I saw a blurry figure standing behind me in the mirror. It's not clear, but I know it's not me. It was another silhouette. My heart beating fast, I turned around and looked around the room, but there was no one. The cold feeling covered my entire body again. Once again, I heard the knocking sound, this time not from the floor but from the corner of the room, where the mirror was reflecting a faint light. I stood up, my legs shaking slightly as I approached the mirror. I stared at it, and this time, I saw it more clearly. The figure in the mirror began to become clearer, and I realized it was a woman. She was dressed in old clothes, her face was unrecognizable, but her eyes glowed in the darkness. Those eyes were not human, they were empty, as if they had no soul. She just stood there, silent, looking at me. Didn't say anything, but I felt something from her eyes. An invitation, a warning, a curse. You can't run away, the voice said in my head. Not from her mouth, but from my thoughts. You came too close. The feeling inside me became suffocating. I can't bear it anymore. I stepped back, not knowing what to do. I didn't want to continue, but I also couldn't leave without answers. I stood in front of the mirror, unable to take my eyes off the faint silhouette in it. Although I couldn't see the woman's face clearly, I sensed a strangeness and death hidden in her eyes. Those eyes, empty and lifeless, stared at me as if waiting for me to do something, as if she knew what I would do next. That voice rang in my head again, this time clearer than ever. You can't run away, it said, coldly like a warning. You came too close. You knew too much. A chill spread throughout my body. My heart was beating fast, the pounding in my chest was a reminder that I couldn't escape this place. I turned around, my eyes still glued to the mirror, but everything had changed. The shadow in the mirror began to move. She was no longer standing still. Her eyes glowed in the dark as she looked at me, and she started walking towards me. I couldn't believe my eyes. That shadow was no longer my reflection, but an entity, a soul coming out from inside the mirror. You can't escape, the voice said again, this time a bit sharp like a curse, making me feel nauseous. You came here for this reason, you are part of this story. I stepped back, unable to tear my eyes away from the reflection in the mirror. Every step she took was like a strong punch to my mind. The space around me began to change, the room became dim, and the mirror reflected a strange scene that I couldn't explain. She walked towards me, her eyes seemed to suck out my soul. Suddenly, a loud noise rang out from below the floor, pulling me back to the present. I looked back, and this time, I couldn't deny that there was a presence on the ground, under the wooden floor I was standing on. The knocking sounded again, not from far away, but from right under my feet. Everything becomes hazy. The steady tapping sounds, like a whisper from a creature living in the darkness, as if it were calling me, telling me to come closer. My heart seemed to stop beating. I had the feeling that if I didn't pull away, I would be dragged under the floor, never able to get out. I looked around the room, but the mirror still held her. The woman was walking out of the mirror, approaching me. Her steps sounded like the steps of a monster. My eyes could no longer see anything but her silhouette. A feeling of fear and obsession seemed to take over me. Unable to bear it anymore, I turned around and ran towards the door. But the door has disappeared. The room seemed to shrink, the walls seemed to twist, and it was no longer a normal space. Everything became twisted and gray. My hands found the cabinets and objects around the room, but none of them could change this strange reality. It felt like someone was pushing me into a corner. Footsteps tapping on the floor echoed from the ground, steady and strong. I know I cannot escape this presence. I heard that voice again, not from her in the mirror, but from this very room. You can't leave. You're already a part of this house. The house will never let you go. At this moment, I felt a strange force from the floor, pulling me down. I struggled to resist, but the more I struggled, the more I felt myself being sucked down. It wasn't a hole, but something deep underground, a space I couldn't understand, but I felt a threat from it. I screamed, but the sound was muffled in my throat. My hand touched the wooden floor, and it immediately went limp, as if something down there was expanding. I felt like I was falling into a deep hole, and every second that passed was a step closer to the unimaginable. But then, suddenly, a strong breeze blew, causing the space around me to start moving. All the surrounding walls seemed to be breaking, and from below the floor, bright lights suddenly flashed up. Like a bright explosion, everything became a blur, and I felt like I was being pulled into another place. A bright light suddenly flashed up from the floor, so bright that I could barely open my eyes. The whole room was engulfed in invisible chaos, shadows swirling around me like a storm. I can't differentiate between what is real and what is an illusion. Everything around me seemed to crumble, walls, objects, even space itself, all were swallowed into a bottomless pit. The ground beneath my feet was no longer solid. I felt like I was falling into a strange space, as if I had been transported into another dimension. And then, everything suddenly fell silent. No sound, no light. Everything became quiet, like I was lost in a void, where time and space no longer had any meaning. I no longer knew where I was, and I couldn't understand why these strange things were happening to me. At this moment, I felt a presence, an invisible but strong existence, watching me from behind. A cold wind came from behind, carrying with it a distinct fishy smell, like the smell of damp earth and decay. I turned around quickly, but there was nothing, just thick darkness. Still, I knew something was standing near me, something was watching me, waiting for what I would do next. A voice spoke, this time a whisper that echoed from all directions, as if coming from this very room, from the very walls around me. You can't escape this place. This is our home. You will never leave. That voice did not belong to the woman in the mirror, nor did it belong to the figures I had seen. It had a cold feeling, as if it had existed a long time ago, deep underground. A feeling of despair engulfed me, like I was trapped in a space I couldn't understand. I wanted to scream, to run away, but my body felt like it was pinned down, unable to move. My whole body was tense, I felt an emptiness growing in my mind. It felt like everything I was experiencing, every knock, every strange phenomenon, was part of a larger plan that I had no control over. I remembered the strange sounds from the floor in room 104, the tapping sounds I had heard every night. Everything inside me now feels like a difficult problem, I can't find a solution. Is something underground, in this house, trying to connect with me? Or is it all just a game I can't understand? A powerful wave swept over me, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I felt like I was being pulled down, not into a deep hole but into another space, a space where there was no light, no space. I feel like I'm stuck in a nightmare that I can't wake up from. In that moment, I realized something important. I was not alone. These spirits, these creatures of the dark, they are calling to me. They wanted me to be a part of this story, to share with them the pain and fear they had endured for centuries. But a part of me, a very small part of me, still doesn't want to give up. I want to get out. I can't let myself be trapped in this place forever. Trying my best, I took a deep breath and shouted, "I'm not part of you. Just as I screamed, a powerful light flashed around me, like a bolt of lightning piercing the darkness. The space around me began to shake, as if the room was collapsing, breaking into pieces. The strange sounds, the tapping, the whispering, all suddenly stopped. An absolute silence prevailed. I stood in the middle of an empty space, nothing around me, just absolute darkness. I don't know where I am, but one thing I know for sure is, I can't stand here forever. Suddenly, a door appeared, out of nowhere, opening up another space, a brighter, fresher space. Perhaps that is the only way out. I walked to the door, not knowing what I would meet inside, but part of me understood that I had to go, had to leave this place, even though it might not be the place I really wanted to go. When I walked through the door, everything started to change. The heavy feeling in my mind gradually disappeared. I don't know if I can truly escape that house, but I know that I cannot continue to live in fear and anxiety. Memories of room 104 and the souls in it still linger with me, but I know that I have overcome some of the shadow that oppressed me. And maybe, there's only one thing I really know, I've changed. I left the hotel, walking in the quiet space of the early morning. Yellow light from the weak sun shined through the trees along the road, but I didn't feel relieved. Even though I had escaped room 104, a part of me still couldn't forget what happened in that room, in that abandoned hotel, where everything bore traces of a dark past. I didn't dare look back at the hotel again. It felt like something was watching me, following my every step. I may have escaped that house, but I cannot deny that that place continues to haunt me, following me in my dreams, in those moments when I cannot avoid the stillness. The tapping sound still echoed in my head, sounds I couldn't explain. Every time I close my eyes, I see the image of a woman in the mirror, her eyes shining like a fire, looking at me, saying nothing, but still there, quietly, waiting for me. I don't know if I can escape her presence, but I understand one thing, the spirits in that hotel don't let go easily. They will always stay, watching those who dare to set foot in their world. As I got into the car and drove away, I felt silence in the air, as if a curse had been cast. Everything out there was normal, but inside me, that feeling couldn't be dismissed. I can still hear the knocking, I can still feel the strange cold I experienced. I wondered if I was truly free of it, or just avoiding something I couldn't understand. And then, one evening, as I lay in bed, I heard the knocking again. Not from the floor, but from inside the room I was in. The steady tapping sounds, as if they had been here all along, continued in the darkness. I opened my eyes, but couldn't see anything. Everything is still normal. But in my heart, I knew that, even though I had left, room 104 had not let me go. And as I turned my head, my last look into the darkness of the room, I realized something undeniable. There was something, in that house, still waiting for me. The soul still cannot find rest, and I know, I cannot run away from what happened. Room 104 is not a place. It is a mark. And I became a part of that story. Even though I have left that hotel, it cannot be denied that the memory of it has not left me. Every night, when the faint light of the street lights shines into my room window, I feel that presence. The knocking sound still echoed in my head, constantly pressing in, showing no signs of stopping. One evening, when I was sitting alone in the living room, the light dimly illuminating the old mirror on the wall, I couldn't get rid of her image. The shadowy figure in the mirror, a woman with bright eyes, eyes full of nothingness, like a cage whose soul cannot escape. I cannot forget her gaze, cannot deny that she is still there, in an invisible space that I cannot reach. Once again, I listened to that knocking sound. But this time, I wasn't panicking anymore. Maybe because I'm used to it. My ears have learned to distinguish each beat. There were 3 knocks, then a silence, then 3 more knocks, like an affirmation of some presence that I couldn't explain. I stood up and walked towards the window. I looked outside, where shadows enveloped the neighborhood. But when I turned around, I found myself standing in front of the mirror. Once again, I saw her. This time, there is no blurriness. She stood there, clearly, looking straight at me. A faint smile spread across her face, a smile that wasn't human, but also wasn't that of an evil creature. It was the smile of a soul that had waited so long to be freed. A smile carries an incomprehensible message. You can't run away, that voice echoed in my head again, this time clearer than ever. You're already a part of us. You can't leave. My heart beat strongly. A cold feeling overwhelmed me, and I felt that no matter where I went, no matter what I did, I couldn't escape what happened in that room. Those souls, those shadows, are all part of me. I turned around and looked in the mirror again. Nothing has changed. She still stood there, in silence, but now I was no longer afraid. Instead, a feeling of calm spread through me, as if I had accepted this. I cannot change the past. I cannot change what happened in room 104. And that, in some way, has become a part of me. The light from outside the window sparkled gently, illuminating my face in the mirror. I looked at myself, realizing that I was no longer the person I used to be. The memories, the silhouettes in the old hotel, have made me a part of that world. And maybe, I will always carry it in my heart. The knocking will never stop. And I will always hear them. You may be wondering, can I really get out? Is it possible that the knocking sounds, the figures, the spirits in that hotel will continue to haunt me? The answer is probably just one thing that you need to experience. Like me, you won't be able to leave without facing the truth. Please join me on my journey to discover these strange and scary stories. If you find this story interesting, don't forget to click like and subscribe so you don't miss the next stories. I would be happy if you could share your thoughts on this story. And don't forget to turn on notifications, so every time a new story appears, you'll be the first to hear it, especially on quiet evenings, when everything becomes more vivid and mysterious than ever. Thank you for accompanying me on this journey. Please leave a comment and subscribe so we can discover more strange secrets in upcoming stories together. Wishing you a very warm and sleepy evening.